Beneath the gilded cage. The first time Josephine Winters noticed Warren Phillips, she was knee-deep in soil at the University Botanical Gardens. With her hands caked in earth and sweat beading on her forehead, she looked up to find a man in an impeccably tailored suit watching her with undisguised fascination. "You seem to be speaking their language," he said, gesturing to the rare orchids she was carefully transplanting. Josephine brushed a strand of auburn hair from her face, leaving a smudge of dirt on her cheek. "Plants are honest. They respond to genuine care, not pretense." She stood, wiping her hands on her worn jeans. "I'm Dr. Josephine Winters, head botanist. Warren Phillips." He extended his hand without hesitation, despite her dirty palms. Tech entrepreneur, and as of today, the university's newest donor for sustainable research. Their courtship was swift and unexpected. Warren was captivated by Josephine's passionate intelligence, her gentle confidence, and the way she moved through the world with purpose. Josephine found herself drawn to Warren's vision, his drive, and the vulnerability he showed only to her. Within a year, they married in a simple ceremony in the botanical gardens where they'd met. The early years were a tapestry of shared dreams and mutual support. Warren's tech startup, focused on innovative agricultural monitoring systems, struggled to find its footing. Many nights, Josephine sat beside him at their kitchen table, analyzing data and offering insights from her botanical expertise. "Your understanding of plant systems is what's missing from our algorithms," Warren told her one night after a breakthrough. "You're the heart of this, Joe." When Phillips Tech finally secured its first major investment, Warren insisted the triumph belonged to both of them. "We're partners in every sense," he declared at their modest celebration dinner in their apartment. But success, once it arrived, came in tidal waves. Within 3 years, Phillips Tech expanded globally. Warren's innovation in agricultural technology earned him features in business magazines and invitations to speak at international conferences. Their small apartment was exchanged for a sprawling estate with manicured gardens that Josephine initially loved tending herself. Gradually, subtly, Warren began to change. His casual attire gave way to designer suits. His circle expanded to include influential investors and celebrities. The warmth in his eyes when he looked at Josephine cooled to something more evaluative. "Darling, wouldn't you prefer to hire a gardener?" he suggested one evening, finding her pruning roses. "Your hands are getting so rough." Josephine looked up, surprised. "I love working with plants, you know that." Warren's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Of course. But you're a Phillips now. You have an image to maintain." The comments multiplied. Warren hired a stylist to elevate Josephine's wardrobe. He suggested she take a leave from her university position to focus on being the perfect hostess for his business gatherings. When she spoke about her research at these events, she increasingly noticed Warren steering conversations away from her work. "Botanical research is hardly exciting dinner conversation," he explained later. "People expect a certain sophistication at these gatherings." One evening, preparing for a gala celebrating Phillips Tech's 5th anniversary, Josephine emerged in a simple but elegant emerald gown that complemented her eyes. Warren looked her over and sighed. "Is something wrong?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "You just look so ordinary, Joe." The words fell like stones. "Francesca Chen will be there tonight with Victor. She always looks spectacular." Josephine felt something crack inside her. "I'm a botanist, Warren, not a socialite." That's becoming increasingly obvious. He checked his watch. "The car's waiting. Try to be engaging tonight." As they entered the glittering ballroom, Josephine caught her reflection in a mirror. She still recognized herself, but she wondered if Warren saw her at all anymore. The woman who had once been his partner, his inspiration, his heart, now seemed to be just another accessory in his carefully curated life, and an increasingly disappointing one. Under the chandelier's glow, surrounded by the elite of the tech world, Josephine felt the gilded cage closing around her. But deep within, a seed of rebellion had been planted, waiting for the right moment to break through. Thorns and Roses, the Phillips Tech 5th Anniversary Gala sparkled with success. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across the ballroom, where Silicon Valley's elite mingled with international investors. Josephine stood by a towering floral arrangement, admiring the rare orchids that reminded her of the day she met Warren. Magnificent, aren't they? A silver-haired woman approached, gesturing to the flowers. Phalaenopsis schilleriana, Josephine replied, her face brightening. Native to the Philippines, they're epiphytes. They grow on other plants without being parasitic. Fascinating. I'm Eleonora Vasquez, Botanical Garden Director in Barcelona. The woman's eyes lit up. You must be in the field. Dr. Josephine Winters. She smiled, relief washing over her at finding someone who spoke her language. I specialize in sustainable agricultural systems at... There you are, Joe. Warren appeared, champagne flutes in hand. His smile tightened as he assessed the conversation. Eleonora, wonderful to see you. I see you've met my wife. We were just discussing Philippine orchids, Eleonora said. Your wife clearly has extensive botanical knowledge. Warren's laugh was dismissive. Oh, Josephine does love her plants. But Eleonora, you must meet Thomas Wellington. He's considering a substantial donation to international conservation efforts. As Warren guided Eleonora away, he whispered to Josephine, Mingle with the investors' wives, darling. Let's save the plant talk for your university colleagues. Throughout the evening, Josephine felt increasingly invisible. When introduced, Warren referred to her as my wife, rather than by name or profession. During dinner, seated between two investment bankers, she attempted to join a discussion about sustainable technology. Actually, my research addresses precisely that challenge, she offered. We've developed a system that reduces water consumption. While Joe likes to dabble in her university greenhouse, Warren interrupted from across the table. But let's hear from Damien about the real-world applications of vertical farming technology. The table's attention shifted, leaving Josephine's cheeks burning. She caught Eleonora watching her with sympathy. Later, as champagne flowed and inhibitions loosened, Warren gathered a group of his closest associates. The secret to success? He announced, arm draped around Francesca Chen, a glamorous venture capitalist. Surrounding yourself with extraordinary people. Like your brilliant wife, suggested Eleonora, who had rejoined the group. Her agricultural research sounds revolutionary. Warren's laugh was sharp. Josephine, she teaches undergraduates how to grow tomatoes. The group chuckled uneasily. No, I meant people who understand ambition. People who elevate you. He gestured around the circle, pointedly excluding Josephine. Not those who, well, remain ordinary. The room seemed to tilt. 5 years of accumulated slights crystallized in that moment. Josephine placed her untouched champagne on a passing tray and walked directly to Warren. May I speak with you privately? Her voice was steady despite the tremor in her hands. In a quiet alcove, away from curious eyes, Josephine faced her husband. Do you realize what you just did? Warren looked annoyed. Don't make a scene, Joe. This night is important. You've made it abundantly clear how unimportant I am. The words flowed now, unstoppable. I've watched you transform from a man with vision into someone obsessed with appearances. When did my passion become embarrassing to you? When did I become merely decorative? You're overreacting. Warren checked his cufflinks. I've given you everything. This lifestyle, these connections. I expected you to adapt, become someone fitting for Warren Phillips, tech visionary? Josephine's voice was quiet now. The man I married valued substance over status. He saw me as an equal, not an accessory to be upgraded. people change. Joe, I've evolved. You've remained exactly the same. The truth hung between them. Josephine removed her diamond bracelet, his anniversary gift, and placed it in his palm. You're right. I am the same person you fell in love with. That's not a failure on my part. She straightened her shoulders. I'll be staying at Clara's tonight. Tomorrow, I'll collect my things. Just my clothes and my books. You can keep everything else. Warren's confident facade cracked. Don't be ridiculous. Where will you go? What will you do? Josephine smiled sadly. For the first time in years, I'll do what I want. Work that matters to me. Live without apology for who I am. You're nothing without me, he hissed, suddenly desperate. Just a botanist with dirt under her fingernails. Perhaps. She slipped her wedding ring off. But I'd rather be nothing authentic than something false. As she walked through the ballroom, toward the exit, Eleonora intercepted her. Leaving so soon? The older woman asked, concern evident. Actually, I'm making a new beginning. Josephine felt lighter already. You mentioned Barcelona's botanical initiatives earlier. I'd love to hear more sometime. Eleonora studied her face. I recognize that look. It's the same one I had 30 years ago when I left a similar situation. She pressed a business card into Josephine's hand. Call me. Not just about orchids. Outside in the cool night air, Josephine took her first deep breath in what felt like years. The stars above seemed brighter, the city lights more vibrant. As the valet brought around a taxi rather than Warren's luxury car, she realized she'd left behind more than just jewelry. She'd shed a skin that had grown too constrictive, one painful, scale at a time. In her purse, her phone began to ring with Warren's distinctive tone. Josephine silenced it without looking. Whatever he had to say could wait. For now, she had her own voice to rediscover. Seeds of change. 18 months could transform a garden completely, or a life. Josephine's small apartment overlooked a community garden where she had claimed a modest plot. From her kitchen window, she watched the morning sun illuminate rows of vegetables and native wildflowers that had replaced what was once barren soil. Perfect metaphor, she murmured, sipping coffee from a handmade ceramic mug. A housewarming gift from Clara, her oldest friend and temporary landlord during those first disorienting weeks after leaving Warren. The divorce had been swift but brutal. Warren had alternated between desperate pleas and cold vindictiveness, ultimately choosing the latter when he realized she wouldn't return. She'd walked away with little financially, refusing to fight for the fortune that had changed him so profoundly. Josephine's phone chimed with a calendar alert. Harvestwood proposal, 10:00 a.m. Her stomach tightened. Today's presentation to the community board could determine whether her most ambitious project would take root or wither. After leaving Warren, Josephine had returned to the university, but with renewed purpose. Her research into sustainable urban agriculture had evolved into something more revolutionary, transforming abandoned urban properties into productive community gardens, employing regenerative agricultural techniques. She'd named it Project Regeneration, and the former Harvestwood manufacturing site, an industrial brownfield on the city's underserved east side, would be its first major implementation. Gathering her presentation materials, Josephine caught her reflection in the mirror. Gone was the carefully styled hair and designer clothing of her life with Warren. Instead, she saw a woman with purpose in her eyes, wearing a simple linen blazer over a practical dress. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a loose braid, revealing the freckles Warren had once suggested she conceal with makeup. Much better, she told her reflection. The Harvestwood site was a stark landscape of crumbling concrete and rusted metal, but Josephine saw only potential as she approached the community center across the street. Inside, representatives from neighborhood associations, city planning, and potential investors waited skeptically. Dr. Winters? A woman with close-cropped, gray hair and keen eyes approached. Lucia Montgomery, East Side Neighborhood Association. Most of these folks have heard dozens of proposals for this site, all promising miracles, none delivering. I'm not offering miracles, Ms. Montgomery, Josephine replied. Just science, sweat, and community partnership. Lucia's expression softened, slightly. We'll see. Josephine's presentation was unlike the polished corporate pitches they'd heard before. She spoke with authentic passion about phytoremediation, using specific plants to extract toxins from contaminated soil. She detailed how local residents would be trained and employed in the transformation process, creating both environmental and economic regeneration. This isn't just about growing food, she explained, displaying slides of similar projects she'd studied internationally. It's about growing community resilience. The Harvestwood site can become a self-sustaining food forest and educational center within 3 years. Ambitious timeline, noted a skeptical city planner. And your funding? I have seed funding from the university's sustainability initiative, Josephine acknowledged. But I'm seeking additional partners who understand that this is an investment in both environmental and social capital. Quite an impressive vision, Dr. Winters. The voice came from the back of the room. A tall man with warm brown skin and attentive eyes had slipped in during her presentation. His simple but impeccable suit suggested quiet wealth, while the notebook in his hand, filled with handwritten notes rather than a tablet, hinted at old-school thoughtfulness. Raphael Okafor, he introduced himself, founder of Terra Futura Foundation. Josephine recognized the name immediately. Terra Futura was at the forefront of sustainable development globally, funding innovative projects that bridged environmental restoration with social justice. Mr. Okafor, I didn't realize you were attending. She maintained her composure despite her surprise. I make a point of evaluating potential investments personally. His smile was genuine, especially when they challenge conventional approaches as thoroughly as yours does. After the presentation, while community members examined the detailed models Josephine had brought, Raphael approached her again. Your proposal indicates extensive knowledge of regenerative agriculture, Dr. Winters, but your passion suggests personal investment in this approach. May I ask what brought you to this work? Something in his sincere interest encouraged honesty. I've always been devoted to understanding how plants heal ecosystems, she explained. But I recently experienced firsthand how environments, social as well as physical, can either nurture or poison. This project is about creating spaces where both people and nature can thrive authentically. Raphael studied her, nodding slowly. You speak of plants and people with equal respect. That's surprisingly rare, even among environmentalists. He offered his card, simple, made of seed paper that could be planted. I'd like to continue this conversation. Perhaps a tour of the site tomorrow? As Raphael moved away to speak with Lucia Montgomery, Josephine felt a curious lightness. For the first time since leaving Warren, she'd been seen completely for her work, her vision, with no preconceptions or judgments about who she should be. 3 days later, Terra Futura announced its partnership with Project Regeneration, providing not just funding but global expertise. Local news covered the story, highlighting the innovative approach to urban renewal. Josephine avoided reading the comments when a business publication mentioned her as botanist Dr. Josephine Winters, ex-wife of Phillips Tech CEO Warren Phillips. Her past was irrelevant to the seeds she was planting for the future. Over the following months, the Harvestwood transformation began. Josephine worked alongside community members and environmental engineers, her hands once again happily in the soil. Raphael visited regularly, bringing not just resources but genuine engagement, often rolling up his sleeves to join the work. Most investors just want progress reports, Josephine remarked one evening as they surveyed the day's plantings. I'm not most investors, Raphael replied simply. And this isn't most projects. As twilight settled over the gradually healing landscape, Josephine realized that more than the abandoned factory was being transformed. In the process of regenerating this wounded place, something within her was flowering again, something that had nearly withered in the shadow of Warren's ambition. Trust, perhaps, or possibility. Blooming Pathways 1 year into Project Regeneration, the Harvestwood site had become almost unrecognizable. Where toxic soil and crumbling infrastructure had dominated, now stood orderly rows of remediation plants, a greenhouse complex built from reclaimed materials and the framework for what would become an education center. Most remarkable was the transformation of the local community, from skeptical observers to passionate participants. On this particular morning, Josephine led a tour for visiting agricultural students. The late summer sun warmed her shoulders as she guided the group toward a section where sunflowers towered impressively. "These aren't just beautiful," she explained, touching one massive bloom. "They're hyperaccumulators, plants that extract heavy metals from contaminated soil. After harvest, we'll process them safely and plant the next succession of remediators." "Dr. Winters makes industrial waste removal sound like poetry," came a familiar voice. Raphael approached from the direction of the main entrance, accompanied by 2 formally dressed visitors. His casual linen shirt and rolled-up sleeves contrasted with their corporate attire, yet he carried himself with unmistakable confidence. Josephine smiled warmly. "Mr. Okafor has a gift for appearing precisely when I'm showing off our most impressive achievements." "Timing is everything in both business and nature," he replied, eyes crinkling with genuine pleasure at seeing her. "May I introduce Marcos, Diaz, and Priya Sharma from the International Sustainable Development Council? They're evaluating projects for their annual Innovation Awards." After the students departed, Josephine guided the visitors through the site, explaining their integrated approach to environmental and community restoration. Throughout the tour, she noticed how Raphael complemented her scientific explanations with context about the project's social impact, how many local residents had received training, how the anticipated food production would address the neighborhood's food desert status, how the educational programs were already changing local schools' science curriculum. "You've created something remarkable here," Priya observed as they concluded at the community kitchen garden, where neighborhood elders taught young people traditional growing methods. "Most remediation projects focus solely on the environmental aspects, not the human ecosystem." "That's precisely what distinguishes Dr. Winters' vision," Raphael said. "She understands that true sustainability must nourish both the land and its people." Josephine felt a flush of pleasure at his words, not just professional pride, but something deeper. Over the past year, Raphael had become far more than a benefactor. Their shared passion for regenerative work had formed the foundation of a profound connection, evolving through countless project meetings, impromptu brainstorming sessions, and quiet moments appreciating the site's gradual transformation. After the ISDC representatives departed, Raphael lingered, helping Josephine collect soil samples for her ongoing research. "You didn't mention the Phoenix grant application," she noted, carefully labeling a container. "I wanted to surprise you." His expression brightened. "We've been shortlisted. The final decision comes next week." "Raphael," Josephine nearly dropped, her samples in excitement. The Phoenix grant would fund expansion to 3 additional sites across the city. "That's incredible news!" "There's more," he continued, suddenly seeming almost nervous, unusual for a man who navigated international boardrooms with ease. "The announcement will be made at the ISDC Global Summit in Singapore. I'd like you to attend with me." Something in his tone made her look up sharply. "As Project Regeneration's lead scientist?" "As that, certainly." Raphael set down his soil collection tools, giving her his full attention. "But also as my guest for the entire week. The summit, yes, but also the botanical gardens, the sustainable architecture tour." Perhaps the cultural heritage sites. He paused. If you're interested. The invitation hung between them, clearly extending beyond professional collaboration. Josephine felt a momentary hesitation, memories of Warren's world of elite business events surfacing like shadows. Raphael seemed to read her thoughts. This isn't about appearances or networking, Josephine. I value your perspective too much for that. I simply find that I enjoy experiencing the world more when I can share it with someone who sees it with both scientific precision and genuine wonder. His smile was gentle. Someone like you. The sincerity in his eyes dispelled her uncertainty. This was nothing like Warren's calculated social climbing. This was an invitation to shared discovery, the same authentic connection they'd built through their work. I'd like that very much, she answered softly. Singapore transformed their relationship. Away from the project site, they discovered new dimensions to their connection. Raphael listened intently as Josephine explained the fascinating adaptations of plants in the Cloud Forest Conservatory. She found herself captivated by his stories of growing up in rural Nigeria, where his grandmother's traditional farming wisdom had first inspired his environmental consciousness. During the summit itself, Josephine witnessed how Raphael's foundation operated, not with the ruthless efficiency of Warren's tech empire, but with deep ethical commitment. He introduced her to colleagues as the visionary botanist whose work is redefining urban renewal, his pride in her accomplishments evident and unforced. When Project Regeneration won the Phoenix Grant, they celebrated with a quiet dinner overlooking the harbor rather than the official gala. You could have networked with hundreds of potential investors tonight, Josephine remarked as they shared a dessert of local fruits. Raphael's gaze was steady. I'd rather celebrate authentic achievements with one extraordinary person than exchange empty pleasantries with a crowd. Returning home, their collaboration took on new dimensions. Professional respect had blossomed into deep personal connection. They maintained appropriate boundaries during project work, but evenings often found them continuing discussions over dinner, their conversations flowing effortlessly from soil chemistry to philosophy, from community development strategies to personal dreams. 6 months later, at the grand opening of the Harvestwood Education Center, Josephine surveyed the gathered crowd, community members, students, environmental activists, and civic leaders. Local children performed a dance celebrating the site's transformation, wearing costumes representing the succession of plants that had healed the land. Your vision made this possible, Raphael said quietly, standing beside her. Our partnership did, she corrected, meeting his eyes. Later that evening, walking through the illuminated paths of the food forest they'd created together, Raphael took her hand. I've been thinking about partnership, he said thoughtfully. In nature, the most resilient systems involve diverse elements supporting each other's growth while maintaining their individual essence, Josephine smiled. Like mycorrhizal networks, fungi and tree roots exchanging nutrients and information while remaining distinct organisms. Exactly. He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. What we've built here follows that pattern. You've never compromised your scientific integrity or personal authenticity, yet together we've created something neither could have achieved alone. The best kind of symbiosis, she agreed, her heart quickening at the intensity in his expression. I find myself hoping that our personal relationship might continue evolving along similar principles. His voice was soft, but certain. Not merging identities, but growing alongside each other, supporting without diminishing. Under the canopy of trees they had planted together, Josephine reached up to touch his face. I think that's the most beautiful definition of love I've ever heard. Their kiss was gentle, a promise of mutual nurturing rather than possession. Around them, the garden continued its quiet work of renewal, a living testament to the possibility of transformation. Full circle, The International Environmental Leadership Awards ceremony transformed the Grand Horizon Ballroom into an elegant celebration of global conservation efforts. Representatives from 6 continents mingled beneath suspended gardens of air plants and trailing vines, their formal attire complemented by living corsages and boutonnieres created from endangered orchid species being preserved through cultivation. Josephine adjusted the delicate bloom pinned to her emerald gown, a dress she had chosen for herself, for its color reminiscent of new growth rather than for others' approval. The past 3 years had seen Project Regeneration expand from the original Harvestwood site to 17 locations across 3 countries, each adapting the core methodology to local ecosystems and community needs. Nervous? Raphael appeared. At her side, handsome in a tailored suit, but characteristically understated. The simple wooden pin on his lapel, carved from reclaimed timber from the original Harvestwood factory, matched the one on her clutch. Excited, she corrected, accepting the glass of sparkling water he offered. The exposure from tonight could help similar projects secure funding worldwide. His smile held both pride and tenderness, always thinking of the greater ecosystem. As they moved through the crowd, Josephine experienced a profound sense of belonging that had nothing to do with gaining acceptance in elite circles. Here, she was valued precisely for the qualities Warren had dismissed as ordinary: her scientific expertise, her commitment to community empowerment, her willingness to literally get her hands dirty in service of regeneration. Dr. Winters, a distinguished woman in her 70s, approached. Brilliant methodology you've developed. I've implemented elements of your bioremediation approach in our Jakarta project. Before Josephine could respond, another guest joined them. The food forest design principles alone deserve recognition. We've adapted them for our work in Nairobi with remarkable results. Raphael stepped back slightly, allowing Josephine to take center stage in these professional exchanges. Unlike Warren, who had constantly positioned himself between her and any recognition, Raphael understood that supporting her visibility enhanced rather than diminished their partnership. Their conversation was interrupted by a familiar voice that sent an unexpected chill through Josephine. Raphael Okafor, the man himself! Warren Phillips stood before them, silver-templed, but still radiating the calculated charm that had once captivated her. His tailored tuxedo and confident stance proclaimed his continued success. Yet something in his eyes seemed harder, more brittle than she remembered. Warren, Raphael acknowledged with professional courtesy. I wasn't aware Phillips Tech had environmental initiatives represented tonight. Our new Sustainable Technology Division is nominated in the Corporate Innovation category, Warren replied, his gaze shifting to Josephine. For a moment, genuine surprise registered on his face. Joe, I hardly recognized you. The comment might have wounded her once. Now, Josephine simply smiled. It's been some time, Warren. Congratulations on your nomination. You look... He seemed to search for words, his practiced smoothness momentarily disrupted. You look radiant. Success suits her, Raphael said warmly, without possessiveness. Project Regeneration has transformed environmental remediation practices globally. Warren's expression flickered between confusion and reassessment. Project Regeneration? You're behind that? He directed the question at Josephine with undisguised astonishment. I've heard our R&D department discussing your methodologies. They're apparently revolutionary. Dr. Winters leads the most significant advancement in urban renewal in decades, Raphael confirmed. The Terra Futura Foundation considers our partnership with her team our most impactful investment. Warren's gaze darted between them, registering their matching wooden pins. The easy comfort between them. Understanding dawned in his eyes. You two are partners, Josephine supplied, in multiple senses of the word. Before Warren could respond, the announcement came for guests to take their seats for the ceremony. With polite nods, Josephine and Raphael excused themselves, leaving Warren standing alone. As they walked away, Raphael gently touched the small of her back. "Are you all right?" "Perfectly." Josephine realized she meant it completely. "It's strange. Seeing him feels like looking at a pressed flower from a garden I visited long ago. I recognize it, but it no longer evokes any strong emotion." The awards ceremony proceeded with elegant efficiency. When Project Regeneration was announced as the winner in the Urban Transformation category, Josephine ascended the stage to accept the award alongside Lucia Montgomery, now the community director of the original Harvestwood site. "This recognition belongs to many hands," Josephine began, scanning the attentive faces. "To the community members who trusted that their neighborhood deserved renewal, to the scientists who refined our methodologies, to the students who bring fresh perspectives to our work." From the podium, she could see Warren watching her intently from his table, his expression unreadable. Most fundamentally, this award celebrates the understanding that true regeneration is never about imposing change from above, but about nurturing the inherent capacity for renewal that exists in both ecosystems and communities. When we approach damaged places or people with respect for their intrinsic potential rather than trying to remake them according to external standards, transformation becomes not just possible, but inevitable. As applause filled the ballroom, Josephine caught Warren's eye briefly. Something passed between them, not regret or longing, but perhaps a quiet acknowledgement of the journey that had led them to this moment. He offered a small nod that seemed to contain both congratulations and realization. Later, during the reception, Josephine and Raphael stood on the balcony overlooking the city lights. She held the award, a sculpture of glass and reclaimed metal, representing intertwined elements of nature and human ingenuity. "I saw you exchange a look with Warren during your speech," Raphael noted gently. "No residual regrets?" Josephine considered the question with the thoughtfulness it deserved. "Not regrets, no. Our marriage taught me valuable lessons about myself, about the difference between being valued and being valuable." She turned to face him fully. "I might never have discovered my true potential without that experience." "Growth often requires disruption," Raphael agreed, "though I wish you hadn't had to experience the painful parts of that process. Every gardener knows that pruning, while seemingly harsh, ultimately strengthens the plant." She placed her hand over his. "I wouldn't change the path that led me here, to this work, to you." Inside, the celebration continued. Through the glass doors, they could see Warren engaged in animated conversation with potential investors, still building his empire. Yet from her vantage point, Josephine recognized a fundamental difference between the man she had married and the man beside her now. Warren had always seen relationships as transactions, partnerships as means to acquire what he lacked. Raphael understood that true partnership meant creating space for each person to flourish authentically, neither diminishing nor possessing the other. "I've been considering the Madagascar project," Raphael said, referring to a proposed expansion they'd been discussing. "The local botanists there have knowledge we could learn from." "I'd like to spend time with the community first," Josephine replied, "understanding their traditional agricultural practices before we introduce our methods." He nodded, eyes warm, with appreciation of her approach. "We could go in spring, after the Harvestwood anniversary celebration." "We," she repeated softly. The word carried none of the erasure it once had in her marriage. With Raphael, "we" expanded, rather than contracted her sense of self. As moonlight silvered the sustainable garden installations surrounding the venue, Josephine thought about the journey from that humiliating gala night to this moment of professional triumph and personal contentment. The botanist in her recognized the pattern, how environments that seem destroyed can, with the right conditions, not merely recover but evolve into something more resilient and diverse than before. Warren had once mocked her as ordinary, failing. To recognize that in nature, the most ordinary elements, water, soil, sunlight, make all life possible. In dismissing her simplicity, he had missed her essential power. "What are you thinking?" Raphael asked, his voice gentle in the night air. Josephine smiled, leaning into his steady presence. "That sometimes what looks like an ending is actually the beginning of something far more extraordinary than we could have imagined." Inside, the award ceremony continued celebrating those working to heal the planet. Outside, under the vast canopy of stars, Josephine and Raphael stood together, two distinct beings rooted in shared purpose, growing not in each other's shadows, but in mutual light. From across the ballroom, Warren watched them through the glass doors. For a moment, something like recognition crossed his face. Perhaps understanding too late the rare and precious thing he had failed to nurture when it was within his grasp. But Josephine, her attention fully present in her chosen life, didn't look back to notice. She had already moved beyond the shadows into her own sunlight.